Tonight on Reporting Scotland, voyeur electrician who hid cameras in people's homes is jailed for 2 years and 8 months. James Denham secretly filmed women in their bedrooms and bathrooms over a 10-year period in Aberdeen.
It's really affected me. I check all the rooms before I do anything. I'm so paranoid now. My panic attacks are off the scale. I just don't feel safe.
Also on tonight's programme, a court hears the gangster behind an international cocaine smuggling operation had said they could have profited by tens of millions of pounds. All under 18s have now been removed from Scotland's young offenders institutions and transferred to more child-friendly settings.
And coming up in the sport, John McGinn says he's still hurting from Scotland's Euros disappointment, but calls for positivity ahead of the Nations League.
Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Monday's programme. He preyed on women during private moments in places where they should have felt safe. That's how prosecutors described the behaviour of an electrician who hid cameras in people's homes to secretly film them. James Denham is in jail tonight after admitting a series of offences which were carried out in Aberdeen over the course of 10 years. Our reporter Ben Phillip has the story.
James Denham. For a decade he violated the privacy of 17 unsuspecting victims. Today, he was jailed for 2 years and 8 months. His offending started in 2013. Some of his crimes committed while working as an electrician around Aberdeen. He placed secret cameras in bedrooms recording young women having sex. He filmed others showering and using the toilet. It was only when one woman found a recording device under her bed that his crimes were exposed. Denham admitted 16 offences. Arriving at Aberdeen Sheriff Court this morning for sentencing, he had nothing to say.
Do you have anything to say to your victims, James? Are you sorry for what you did?
One victim spoke to BBC Scotland News of the impact it's had on her life. Denham had filmed her having sex without her knowledge. We've protected her identity.
It's really affected me. I check all the rooms before I do anything. I'm so paranoid now. My panic attacks are off the scale. I just don't feel safe. If you can't feel safe in your own bedroom, where can you feel safe? It's made me a lot more fearful day to day. I'm a lot less trusting. It feels like it isn't happening to me. This is something you read about. It's not something that happens to you, but it has happened to me. It's disgusting.
Another victim was filmed getting changed from outside her flat. The court heard Denham sometimes filmed through windows or on one occasion through a keyhole. His victim felt she had to move out after police told her what had happened.
It was a lot to take in and process, not just for me, but everyone around me as well. I struggled a lot with my sleeping. I've had to go through counselling. It's had an impact on my studies. It's made me much more cautious, and I'm really aware of any windows or keyholes or anything like that nowadays. I think it's disgusting. I think it's appalling. Who thinks it's okay to invade other people's privacy on that scale? I think it's sick. Someone who does that is sick.
Denham's defence said he's been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and finds it difficult to articulate his behaviour.
Sheriff Buchanan said Denham's guilty plea had spared his victims a huge amount of stress and anxiety. However, he said Denham's behaviour had caused serious psychological shock and harm to all those he affected. Tonight, he begins his jail sentence. Ben Phillip, reporting Scotland at Aberdeen Sheriff Court.
A gangster who masterminded an international drug smuggling operation thought it could earn him and his associates tens of millions of pounds, which one described as life-changing. Jamie Stevenson was back in the dock at the High Court in Glasgow today, where the scale of the scheme devised on an encrypted messaging platform called EncroChat was revealed. Our Home Affairs correspondent David Cowan has more.
This cargo of Calypso premium bananas from Ecuador was searched by UK Border Force officials in September 2020, following an investigation called Operation Pepperoni. The boxes were opened and, hidden beneath the fruit, foil packages, 119 of them weighing nearly a tonne. Each contained 8 blocks of cocaine. It took Police Scotland and the National Crime Agency 3 days to check it all. The estimated wholesale value, £38 million. The potential retail value, £76 million. The operation had been planned and financed by Jamie Stevenson, Lloyd Cross and others. They recruited Glasgow fruit merchant David Bilsland to arrange the cargo of bananas, using his business experience to provide the appearance of legitimacy. The plot was discussed on EncroChat, a secure messaging platform infiltrated by French law enforcement in 2020. Jamie Stevenson and an unnamed associate talked about the millions that could be made. The first person said, "That fruit job is the prize." Stevenson replied, "We prob get 100, 125. That's life-changing work," came the reply. In another exchange on EncroChat on dummy runs, David Bilsland said, "It's not been easy, lots of wee issues, but that's what I'm here for, sorted them all out." Lloyd Cross replied, "All sounds absolutely perfect, mate. You're doing some top work." Bilsland responded, "Thanks, you too, we're all a team. Have a good weekend." Then came the bust in Dover. Stevenson and Cross went on the run. Stevenson was caught in the Netherlands, Cross in Spain. Both were extradited back to Scotland. The second drugs operation involved huge quantities of Atezolam, street Valium. In June 2020, police raided a pill factory in Kent and found 13.4 million Atezolam tablets. Their wholesale value would have been £400,000, but on the streets far, far more. In an EncroChat about Atezolam, Jamie Stevenson said he thought there was 35 mil to be made. Stevenson and his stepson Jerry Carbon admitted being involved in the production and supply of Atezolam, as did Ryan McPhee, who was to store large quantities of the pills. A fifth man, Paul Bowes, also admitted involvement. All 6 will be sentenced in October.
Well, Dave's here now. And Dave, these men could have made huge amounts of money had they not been caught.
Yeah, I mean, the figures that were mentioned today were the result of negotiations between the prosecution and the defence. You know, it could be argued that they're on the Conservative side. That consignment of cocaine was certainly one of the largest cargoes of drugs ever to be found heading for Scotland. I mean, the figure of £76 million came up in court today. The judge, Lord Eric, looked up from his notes at the men in the dock. We still don't really have a full picture about how all of this came about. Clearly, the evidence from EncroChat was actually absolutely crucial in securing these convictions. But we heard today that Spanish police were watching when Jamie Stevenson met David Bilsland in Alicante months before the French got into EncroChat. This presumably would have been at the behest of Police Scotland. The men were obviously on their radar by then. Jamie Stevenson is a major figure in organised crime, has been for decades. He's been convicted of 2 offences which carry maximum sentences of 14 years and 10 years. And I think all of the 6 men can expect substantial jail terms when they're back before Lord Eric at the High Court in Glasgow in a month's time.
OK, Dave, thank you. To some of the day's other stories now. And a violent offender who escaped from Dundee Sheriff Court after being told he was about to be jailed has been captured after hiding under a nearby shipping container. Andrew Patty leapt over the dock, leaving one staff member holding his jacket, and escaped through a set of double doors. He was captured and rearrested shortly afterwards. The 32-year-old had just been sentenced to 32 months in jail for a series of attacks on prison officers. Residents in Paisley have been allowed to return home after police say suspicious items were found in a building. Emergency services were called to initial reports of a car fire in George Street this morning. Police say the fire was extinguished, but a number of items were found in the common close of a building nearby. There were no reported injuries, and a 41-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the incident. And the Loch Lomond National Park Authority is recommending a controversial Flamingo Land holiday resort is refused planning permission. The report for the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park Authority found the application failed to comply with the park's local development plan and exceeded the site's capacity for development. A decision will be made on the 16th of September. The Prison Service has called it a landmark day. Why? Because it's now illegal for 16 and 17-year-olds to be sent to adult prisons. The change in the law follows the high-profile suicides of young people who were detained at Polmont Young Offenders Institute. Children will instead be sent to specialist secure care units. The move will also see capacity freed up in the prison estate. Christina Renton reports.
William Brown, also known as William Lindsay, was a 16-year-old. He'd been in the care system since he was a young child, but he'd moved back in with his mum. Niall Cahill worked with him.
I did absolutely love spending time. We were so close, so close. It was one of the strongest bonds I've had with a young person. You know, it just didn't feel like work. Didn't feel like work at all. So funny as well, charismatic, full of life. Absolutely loved being back home within his family.
William had previously attempted suicide on a number of occasions. In October 2018, he took a knife into a police station. He was meant to go to secure children's accommodation, but there were no spaces available for him. He was sent to Polmont. Within 72 hours, William had taken his own life.
This is just a vulnerable young man. I believe it was my colleague that had actually, when I was in contact with him, but it was my colleague that was on that weekend when he'd been in. And we're going, this is a cry for help. You know, because his mood would dip. There's no two ways about that. You know, he'd been through a lot in his life.
On Friday, the last child was moved out of Polmont, and it is now illegal to send under 18s to young offenders institutions.
Children and young people that are required to be restricted of their liberty, that this should be done so in, you know, a child-friendly, care-appropriate, rehabilitative setting. And I think that is for the benefit of the children and young people themselves and the wider community in general.
Children are housed in small groups of up to 6, where they have a higher staff ratio. The staff are trauma-informed, they've got different training, longer training courses. It's overseen by the Care Inspectorate. So it's run differently, it's designed for children.
The Scottish Prison Service said they fully agree that prisons are not the right environment for anyone under 18. Victim Support Scotland said they're concerned about the impact on families of victims in the most extreme cases and how they perceive the changes. Niall hopes William's story will never be forgotten.
Do you think this is maybe a legacy for William, that there will now be no more children in Polmont?
Yeah, I think it is, and I hope that lasts as William's legacy in this, because it breaks my heart to think that William would just be forgotten in all this, because you've got to learn lessons from such a catastrophic mistake within our system.
That report from Katrina Renton. The mother of a pregnant woman pushed to her death on Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh has visited the scene of her murder for the first time to unveil a memorial. Yasmin Javid said losing her daughter Fawzia in such a horrific and brutal way had ripped her life apart. Fawzia's husband, Kashif Anwar, is serving at least 20 years in prison for her murder. Stephen Gordon reports.
With Arthur's Seat shrouded in mist, Yasmin Javid visits the scene of her daughter's murder for the first time. Fawzia Javid was 17 weeks pregnant when her husband pushed her to her death. 3 years to the day, her family travelled to Edinburgh to unveil a memorial bench.
The bench is a tribute to the amazing person Fawzia was, and also a reminder what happened to Fawzia.
A solicitor from Leeds, Fawzia Javid's 8-month marriage to Kashif Anwar became increasingly abusive.
He wouldn't let her talk to her friends. He didn't even like her coming to visit her parents. He was just using abusive language to her. Just really like controlling and abusive.
Fawzia had spoken to police and was planning to divorce Anwar when the couple visited Edinburgh and climbed Arthur's Seat.
Kashif Anwar claimed that his wife had slipped and fallen, but during his murder trial, the court heard that as she lay dying, Fawzia Javid told a police officer who'd come to her aid that her husband had pushed her over the 50-foot cliff.
Anwar was convicted and sentenced to at least 20 years in jail. The impact of his crime felt every day by Fawzia's family.
We have had our lives ripped apart and been brought to our knees with our unimaginable pain and grief. We have been left with a massive hole in our hearts for the rest of our lives.
3 years on, authorities in England are still reviewing how Fawzia's case was handled. As they campaign for better protection for women, her family say this memorial will stand as a lasting tribute. Stephen Gordon reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Now, she is the only Eurovision winner to also do a James Bond soundtrack. But that's not all. Since making her voice heard over 60 years ago with Shout, Lulu has ticked off TV, film, Glastonbury, and even the piece of cake on last year's The Masked Singer. Now, in celebration of such a varied career, Lulu is preparing to get back on the road for her last ever tour. And she has been sharing some advice for the next generation of artists.
Learn your craft by doing things over and over and having to learn 7 songs in a week, dialogue, sketches, just turning up and being on.
And you're using those skills now on tour?
I've used them all my life. And I think, I used to work in a band doing gigs, and I think anyone who wants to start, they say, can you give me an advice? I don't like to give advice, but when asked, get in a band, go do the gigs, learn your craft.
There you go, sound advice from Lulu. I wonder if she's got any advice for the Scotland squad.
They probably take it right now, mightn't they? Thanks, Laura. Hello there. Scotland midfielder John McGinn says he will never get over Scotland's dismal performance at the Euros, but insists results in Germany won't affect the mood of the camp as they prepare for their first match in the Nations League. With so many club games yesterday, just 8 outfield players trained at Lesser Hampden this morning as McGinn and his teammates get ready to host Poland on Thursday.
These things never leave you. Everyone always says the highs in football make the lows worth it, but they're lying. So it'll always be in the back of your head things you could have done differently, both together as a team and individually. So we kind of change that now. It's about looking forward.
And it is the start of a new Nations League campaign. And for the first time, Scotland are in the top tier. But with that comes top tier opposition, as you'd expect. Poland are in Glasgow on Thursday before Steve Clarke takes his players to Portugal on Sunday. Croatia are the other team in the group. And the level of opposition is a result of Scotland's improvement in recent years. That is according to assistant coach John Carver.
Let's not forget, Scotland were in the doldrums 23 years ago, and now we've qualified for 2 back-to-back Euros. We've qualified and got into the Nations League Group A. So I think we're going in the right direction. There's still a huge gap to close. Let's not forget that. But we have to put it into perspective of where we are, how far we've come, and where we want to go.
Well, sticking with football and more than 24 hours on from the first Old Firm fixture of the season, and the debate continues about the gulf between Scotland's biggest 2 clubs as Celtic continued their dominance over Rangers with a 3-0 win yesterday. The reigning league champions were favourites going into the game in front of their home support, and despite Rangers starting on the front foot, it didn't take long for Celtic to find their rhythm. Kyogo had a goal ruled out for offside before Daisen Maeda found Alistair Johnson's cross to make it 1-0 inside the first 20 minutes. Kyogo did then secure what is his 8th goal in 10 starts against Rangers before captain Callum McGregor then made it 3.
Really pleased with the mentality of the squad. I think that continuation from the end of last season, we take that into pre-season where we were so good, and I mentioned pre-season because we were able to put a lot of things in place then, and then we've just been able to take that on into the season itself. Not giving away much from a defensive perspective, but the football and the intensity and the speed has been so pleasing.
Losing 3-0 is very hard, but we didn't reward ourselves in that way. So we started as the best team in the first 10-12 minutes with 2 clear chances. You need to take these moments if you want to win Old Firm games, that's clear.
Let's look then at recent Old Firm results, which really underlines just how dominant Celtic have been. Yesterday's 3-0 victory was their 8th in the last 10 meetings between the 2 sides. One of those games was drawn with Rangers victorious on just 1 occasion. That record led to a handful of supporters verbally abusing their team when they arrived back at Ibrox last night. Former Rangers winger Jamie Murphy says Clement and his players need to work out a different way to take on their biggest rivals.
We had a game plan to press them high and not let them play. The good teams, the best teams, are able to do it consistently throughout the game, not just in spells. And unfortunately for Rangers, Celtic have been doing that for the last couple of seasons. So they've got to find a different way to play against Celtic, as been shown the last 3-4 times, 5 times even that Clement's played against them. They've kind of tried to play the same and it hasn't worked. So that's on him now to think of another plan for the future.
Scotsman Stephen Maguire has won his first Paralympics medal with a gold in the individual boccia event in Paris. Maguire beat his Colombian opponent 8-5 in the final to become the second Scot to top the podium for Paralympics GB in what is his 4th Games. Many congratulations to him. And some more medal news just to bring you, Laura, in the last 5 minutes or so. Another Scot, Nathan McQueen, he has just secured a gold for Paralympics GB alongside Jodie Grinham in the mixed team compound archery event.
Good stuff. We like medals, don't we? Now, did you get your Oasis tickets at the weekend?
I have to confess, Laura, I was not even in the queue.
Elsewhere engaged. Yes, well, there's a lot of people that did not, as you will be well aware. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, because after all the fanfare surrounding the announcement of their reunion, the issue of so-called dynamic pricing overshadowed tickets for Oasis's tour, which went on sale just at the weekend. It saw the cost of tickets going up amid huge surge in demand. And now the UK government says it'll look into it. Here is Adam Webb from the Fanfare Alliance.
Well, I think it's fairly self-evident there are a few teething problems. I mean, I was actually I think probably in a waiting room for the waiting room, or the queue for the queue, I think, for quite a lot of Saturday. Clearly, it's a big challenge putting on, selling 1 million plus tickets in a day, and again, there's clearly a lot of challenges technologically to doing that.
And you can see more on that story over on the 9 on the BBC Scotland channel tonight at 9 o'clock. And now Gillian has the weather, and that sun on Saturday seems a long time ago now, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? It's been a wet start to September. I think today will be the wettest day of the week. Tomorrow, still the chance of a shower, but not as heavy as today. And then something more settled for the second half of the week, Laura. Good evening to you. Yes, it has been a very wet start to September. And speaking of rainfall, the Met Office has released the official summer statistics. You won't be surprised to hear it has been an exceptionally wet one for Western Scotland, especially the month of August. The darkest blues here indicating areas that have seen double the rainfall we'd expect for the month of August. And it's been the UK's coolest summer since 2015 as well. Today we've been topping up those rainfall gauges with heavy bands of showers that have been working their way northwards. We still have a yellow warning of thunderstorms from the Met Office for parts of southern and eastern Scotland. Still some difficult conditions to come, but the very heavy rain is on the move. It's trundling away northwards. It will linger longest over the Northern Isles tonight, but elsewhere across the country, turning drier, clearer. We'll start to see increasing cloud, bringing some more showery rain into the Western Isles by tomorrow morning. And I think a few cool spots tonight where those skies remain clear. Tomorrow, there'll be plenty of sunshine for most during the morning, but into the afternoon, we have that cloud increasing from the west with showery outbreaks of rain moving in. By 3 o'clock, I think sunshine hanging on for Shetland. Still some brightness for the Banff and Buchan coast. But for most, lots of clouds, some showery outbreaks of rain. They'll be most frequent in the west, but certainly not as heavy as what we've seen today. And by this stage, we're seeing the back edge of that rain moving in over the Western Isles. So a wee bit of brightness developing here, and into tomorrow evening, some of that late brightness extending across the west coast. But into tomorrow night, we'll keep a feed of showers going, including some heavy ones. We start to see some clearer skies developing later in the night. And for Wednesday, a good deal of dry weather, but there will still be the risk of a shower, especially for northern Scotland. Best of the sunshine developing across the south, and that's because high pressure is starting to build in, hopefully settling things down for the second half of the week. So for Thursday, still the chance of a shower. They'll be relatively few and far between. For most, it's dry with some decent sunny spells. Laura.
A bit better than expected anyway. Thanks, Gillian. Now tonight's main news again. An electrician who hid cameras in people's homes and secretly filmed women in their bedrooms and bathrooms has been jailed for 2 years and 8 months. James Denham admitted a string of offences which were carried out in Aberdeen over a 10-year period. And a court has heard the gangster behind an international cocaine smuggling operation had said they could have profited by tens of millions of pounds. Jamie Stevenson planned the scheme on an encrypted messaging platform which was infiltrated by French law enforcement. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. I will have your late news about 10:30 tonight. Join me then if you can. In the meantime, from all of us here, do enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.